Hey, Slapdawg! The Brainiacs are ready!
Welcome into Leather Brains. Your host here, Slapdawg, episode 141. It's great to be here. I'm very excited to do this episode, but I couldn't do it alone. Yeti, welcome in, brother.
Hey, how's it going, man? I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scared to come on this episode.
Were you?
Yeah, last week we did a segment. It was called our 4 bold takes of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And Slaps,
You got some
I'm gonna
heat,
hold
brother.
myself accountable here. I said the Lions were gonna beat the Ravens. Not a good look.
Yeah, but you couldn't. I don't
know, but
yeah.
Slap my wrist. And then Devontae Smith, top 15 wide receiver. That one was a hard miss too. So 0 for 2 last week.
Hey, you know what though? I condemn you for pulling out the receipts and saying, "Hey, I was wrong." I think that's great. I think we need a little bit more of that, because here's the sad realization when we talk about fantasy. This is a numbers game. This is a statistics game. But this is also a luck game. And I think that more often than not, a lot of players out there, they get pissed at any fantasy analyst or anybody that says, "You told me to start this guy." And it's like, well, yeah, because it makes sense for this reason, and this reason. Whether you choose to listen to us is on you, pal. So, you got to give yourself some credit. Give yourself a pat on the back, because we're here. And I would say that we're pretty knowledgeable in what we're talking about, very obviously.
You like to think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, but we're not going to hit a home run every single time, man. So,
and even though we're not putting money, like on the money line or the spread in Vegas, right? This is still fantasy football. It's still gambling.
Oh, yeah. It really is. And that's something that it took me a while as a fantasy player to realize, that at the end of the day, this is gambling. There might not be money involved, or there might be at the end of somebody's league, there's some financial compensation, but this is gambling every single week. And I think that's why everybody kind of likes it a little bit, That's why I like it, because I'm a degen. But we do have some things to talk about, of course. That's why we're doing this dang old podcast. We have the Monday night takeaways, so we need to do a little bit of Monday night cleanup. We got a breeze through segment, so this is going to be, we're going to talk about injuries, some returns for some players, and then also just some fantasy football targets for those injuries, and some probable waiver wire pickups to help suffice in times of need. We're going to play buy or sell today, and I'm actually very, very excited to do this, because this is the moment. This is the time, Yeti, where we have to start thinking about the playoffs. Now, if you're... I know, crazy. But if you're 0-7, I don't know if you're going to make it. You might.
Probably didn't listen to Leather Brains.
You definitely didn't listen to Leather Brains. But if you're even in the middle of the pack, we have brought some buy and sell guys here today for everybody to discuss, to look at, because potentially these are going to be the guys that are your sleepers, so to speak, or people who might be going under the radar, or people that it might be time to say goodbye to and sell. So we brought some buy and sell candidates today. We're going to play Flex Appeal, baby. So you and me are going to bring 2 players to the table and flex them against each other and decide which one should be in your starting lineup. And then we're going to round this thing out with the Brainbusters. We are here to help all of the fantasy football players out here. So if anybody has any questions, submit it over on YouTube in the comments. And please, while you're there, just hit subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. We love the support. And if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, it truly does mean the world, because we are grinding and busting booty every single week for all those Brainiacs out there, and the support is very appreciated. So let's begin, Yeti. Let's talk about the Monday night takeaways. Kirk Cousins, he outperformed Brock Purdy. Jordan Addison had a breakout game. And has the panic alarm set in for San Francisco? Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, I think it's important to give credit where it's due here and talk about Kirk Cousins, because usually when we talk about Kirk Cousins in primetime games, we talk about how bad he is. But man, in a situation where San Francisco was heavily favored, we all thought San Fran would win. Kirk performed, and he looked great against a San Fran defense that is, it looks kind of scary this season, but the last 2 weeks it's kind of been suspect. It hasn't gotten the job done. Kirk, he threw for almost 400 yards on this defense. He had 2 touchdowns. He only threw a pick, which is That's okay. It's not
Shit
bad
happens.
against the
Shit
49ers
happens.
defense. Yeah. But I think a lot of credit goes to the Vikings offensive line too. I think this was the first game where they actually held Kirk up.
Yeah.
He got sacked one time. In previous games, that wasn't the case. So he had time. He was hitting his receivers in stride, and he looks good.
Well, you mentioned the receivers. Jordan Addison, I mean, you want to talk about filling in for Justin Jefferson. He certainly did this game, which unfortunately for myself and many others, he absolutely destroyed in fantasy football this last week. Is he here to stay with JJ being gone?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think Kevin McConnell, the head coach, figured out, hey, Justin Jefferson is gone. We need a new alpha for the time being. What better guy to do that than Jordan Addison, your first round wide receiver that you picked? And one thing with Addison, I know he had a huge game last week or Monday night, but his 6 touchdowns on the season are tied for the most touchdowns by a rookie wide receiver through the first 6 weeks or 7 games. So kudos Jordan Addison. He's been a quiet guy until Monday night. So
are we hitting the panic alarm on the 49ers? I mean, they've now lost their last 2 games. I think this was one that most people were expecting the 49ers to win pretty handily, and same thing last week with the Jets. So is panic starting to set in for the 49ers perhaps?
That's the $1 million question right now. Before Sunday games had kicked off, I was saying that Philly and San Francisco were going to be in the NFC Championship game because those two teams have the most complete rosters. They look great, and I thought only San Francisco could match Philly's physicality. But man, the past 2 weeks, San Francisco has looked very suspect on defense, and it's a lot to do with their secondary. They're not dealing with any injuries back there, but they're giving up yards to these guys. I mean, Kirk Cousins threw for over 300 yards against them on Monday night. And then PJ Walker, a backup from the XFL, he's a long journeyman from the NFL or in the NFL. He had a decent day, coming off the bench, and he beat the 49ers. And not only is it the defense's fault, but Brock Purdy. We talked about him as an MVP candidate, a few weeks ago. I think this is all our fault. But the past 2 games, he's thrown 3 picks. And I mean, we can sit here and we can say, yeah, he overthrew some of the guys or his wide receiver stopped on the routes and stuff. But at the end of the day, that's 3 picks on the stat line, right? It looks a little concerning for the San Francisco 49ers when you compare them to what Philadelphia did Sunday night against Miami.
Sure. I think, and I don't know if there's any validity to this, but you mentioned Brock Purdy and how these last 2 games, he really hasn't performed. Deebo Samuel's been gone. Mm-hmm. Perhaps does that play any part in this? I know that Deebo has been kind of lackluster this last year and has not looked like Deebo of what was it, 2021 when he had his insane year. But it's worth noting, I mean, he is still the wide receiver 1 for this team. And so when you take that threat away from you, that makes the defense a little bit easier as far as their job is concerned. So do you think that might play any parts in this as well?
It definitely could play a factor, right? Because the number 1 cornerback is now going to be on Ayuk, who is Brock Purdy's, I would say, his favorite wide receiver with Deebo in the lineup. And so Deebo can't draw that coverage now. Ayuk isn't getting those friendly matchups anymore. And that leaves them with Juwan Jennings, as their wide receiver 2, basically, which I kind of alluded to this when I talked about Brock Purdy a minute ago. Him and Jennings they weren't on the same page, and that's why one of those picks had happened. Jennings had stopped on one of those routes, and boom, there's a pick. But I mean, it's hard to make any excuses for this guy when you look at this roster from head to toe. They shouldn't be losing to the Minnesota Vikings. They shouldn't be losing to the Cleveland Browns. They still have Christian McCaffrey. They have Brandon Ayuk. They have George Kittle. And we hold Kyle Shanahan in high regards. He needs to figure out how to use the guys on his roster.
Which he typically that's what he's known for, and that's what he's very good at. So I'm not going to read too much into this. They play the Bengals this week, which I think actually could end up being a pretty good game if the Bengals show some signs of life that we know they're capable of. They really haven't done it as much this season as most people have hoped, especially for fantasy purposes. But I think that this could be an interesting game. And really, if the Bengals come out and play, they had a bye week So that, that could help with Joey B and the potential return of him looking like Joey B of old. I'm excited for that game. I think it will be interesting. And I think that game will also show us a little bit more about the 49ers. But we have some news with injuries. And Brock Purdy's not going to be around this week due to a concussion protocol. So on the flight home, it was found out that he was displaying concussion-like symptoms. And Brock Purdy will not be there this week. So that makes it a little bit more difficult for the 49ers to try and get it done with Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, and like I said, Kyle Shanahan is known as a quarterback guru, the offensive guru. We're going to see what he can do with Sam Darnold if he is indeed the starter. But don't the 49ers play on Monday night? Are they on Monday night again, or am I making that up?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. I know they're playing the Bengals. I don't know what. I just always assume all games are on Sunday at 12 o'clock, unless unless I know for a fact they're not. They play Sunday afternoon, 4:25 or 3:25 for all you Midwestern.
Oh, that's kind of a problem, right? Because if we're holding off until game time to figure out if Brock Purdy's playing, we're going to need to look at some guys that are on the waiver wire slaps.
Bingo. And there's a couple guys here. So if you are in Brock Purdy's just one of many injuries. So I'll just go through the list of quarterback injuries that we are facing this week for fantasy. So Giants quarterback Daniel Jones has a neck injury and still has not been cleared for contact. So I expect T-God himself, Tyrod Taylor, to start against the Jets. Cleveland quarterback P.J. Walker will start this week's game against the Seahawks. Deshaun Watson is still rehabbing his shoulder and will not be playing. Titans quarterback Will Levis is expected to start on Sunday's game versus the Falcons and be the primary quarterback, although there are news reports that will be both of their quarterbacks will be playing in this one. So I don't know what Mike Vrabel is doing, but I don't. That's a whole dumpster fire that I wouldn't want to touch. And then, like I mentioned, Brock Purdy is out. So there's a lot of quarterbacks that, for fantasy purposes, people probably have starting or were going to start that are not going to be there. So I present you with a couple alternative solutions that are on the waiver wire. We'll start with Gardner Minshew. On paper, in Gardner Minshew, Colts backup that is going to start for the rest of the year because Anthony Richardson is just got surgery on his shoulder and is done. They're playing the Saints this week, and the Saints are actually really good at stopping the quarterback for fantasy purposes. But I think that Minshew he's certainly worth a consideration, Yeti. He rushed for 2 touchdowns this last week and threw for another 2 touchdowns against arguably the best defense in the NFL right now, being the Browns. So over the last 2 weeks, when Minshew has gotten a full start, he's actually finished as quarterback 4 on the season. And I understand that's a 2-week window, so we can't really look home on it. But against the Browns, I was really impressed with what I saw, and he's only 18% rostered right now. So I think with the rushing upside that we did see with him against the top-tier elite defense, I think he's certainly worth a grab. He's not the only one. We also have Derek Carr, which sounds kind of gross, just depending on the week. But this is the week, if you're going to make a pivot, this is the week to do it with Derek Carr. He's playing against the Colts, who are dead last against the quarterback. So they're allowing the most points to the quarterback position right now. I don't think Derek Carr is a bad quarterback. And when you're playing against a defense that is really, really leaky for the quarterback and fantasy points, and he's sitting on the waiver wire and you need a quarterback, that's really, really appealing. He's 35% rostered right now. So go see if Derek Carr is available. And the last one that I bring to you, and I like the other two way more, but this guy's also an option, is Bryce Young. It's not sexy. It's not promising, but it is an option, Yeti. Young is playing against a Texans defense that is also bleeding at the quarterback position. They're allowing 26.7 points on average per game to the quarterback position. Like I said, I know it's not sexy. Bryce Young is a rookie quarterback. The Panthers are not a good offense, but if you are desperate, he is 25% rostered and maybe worth a play this week if you don't have a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me out of the 3 which one I prefer, there's no bias here because he's my ex-boyfriend or whatever. Derek Carr, I think he's a guy that you probably want to target this week. Minshew he's a very attractive option. Obviously, you had mentioned his rushing upside that he had last week versus the Browns. I just kind of worry that's a one-off thing, and it's going to be hard to rely on that. So he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Could he get another one this week? It's possible, right? But they have Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, so I don't feel confident in them rushing at the goal line with Minshew.
No, and it is worth noting on those touchdowns that he did rush for, it was a passing down, and he decided to scramble for it to get the touchdown. So it's all going to depend on field position with that. They're not going to draw any quarterback designed runs, but it just shows that he's not afraid to tuck it and run on the goal line, and that is opportunity.
Yep. And so with Derek Carr, I think he's going to get you there through the air. And like you had mentioned, the Colts secondary is garbage. I think this is a prime position for Derek Carr to show off what he can do, and for him and Olave to get on the right page.
Sure. There's one quarterback left. This one, I'm not going to say start this week. I'm not going to say he's worth a play. But he certainly, I think, is worth a roster consideration right now, and that's Kyler Murray. It was announced today that he did return. He was a full participant in practice today. So I'm not starting him. I own Kyler Murray in a couple leagues, and I'm not going to start him. But I do want to roster him because he's somebody that I think could potentially be startable. What really is going to dictate that in my mind is what's his rushing upside look like right now? Because he is coming back from a leg injury, and that is a problem. But if he actually is 100% and he is playing well and he is looking good, I would pick him up because what he was before his injury was a top 10 quarterback for fantasy purposes. Fair to say?
Right. And yeah, for sure. My question is just going to be, how much does he trust his knee? How much does he trust that rushing upside that we talk about in fantasy, And I think a lot of him coming back depends on the matchup too, right? You look at the Cardinals schedule, the next 4 games, they play the Ravens this week, the Browns next week, they play the Falcons, and then they play the Texans. So 2 not ideal matchups this week and next week. The Falcons and Texans, they don't have terrible defenses either.
No,
so
they don't.
It's like, at what point do you feel comfortable throwing him out there? If
you're but
Gannon.
On the flip side of it, you look at like, no matter what, when you draft Josh Allen, you start Josh Allen. And I'm not saying Kyler Murray is Josh Allen, but you have some quarterbacks that are startup proof. So for me, Kyler Murray was a startup-proof quarterback before the injury, and that's worth a roster spot for me to sit there and say, prove it to me. So I'm not starting him. I'm not saying he's worth a start, and I'm not saying definitely don't start him this week if he is playing. However, who knows? He could come back and look the same, or maybe even they gave him some nasty injections to make his legs super strong, and he's even better than he was before. So I think it's worth a roster spot, and I would certainly be picking him up. Don't count on him, though, this week.
Did you trust him because of his rushing upside or his arm? Let me ask you that.
That's a good question. And I think I have said this before. I do think Kyler Murray, and this was before the injury, so understand that. I think Kyler Murray could throw the ball better than Lamar Jackson could. And I think his rushing upside was just as on par with Lamar Jackson. Like if you were to ask me before the injury which quarterback I would rather have, I like Lamar Jackson because he's bigger. But I liked Kyler Murray because he was more athletic.
And he's with all that Call of Duty.
And nobody's better than him in Call of Duty. But I don't know. I like Kyler Murray's throwing ability too. I don't think he's a bad thrower. I thought he's always been a pretty good thrower. So he's gonna have to prove it to me. But I am interested to see what he looks like coming off this injury.
I can't wait to dissect his comeback in the next week or 2 with you.
I'm not looking forward to it. I'm going to be honest, but you know what? That's what we're here for. That's the game we play. So let's do buys and sells. Yeti, you ready to do this thing?
Let's do it, baby.
Okay. You want me to kick it off?
I got one for you right off the bat. Slaps. Breece Hall. What are we doing with Breece Hall at this point in the season?
With Breece Hall, Yeti. He's a buy for me, man. He's a buy for me right now, and I would be very heavily invested in trying to obtain him at all costs, to be honest with you. Since week 5, he's put up 20-plus points per game, and his usage has also gone up. So at the beginning of the year, there was some limitations on his snap count. I think those have been lifted because since week 5, he's had a 50% plus snap share, which is great. I still think Dalvin Cook will be a part of this offense, but I don't think it's gonna make me any less scared of Breece Hall. Hall's rest of the season schedule is also freaking incredible. His only difficult games are the Bills in week 11 and the Falcons in week 13, and then the Browns in week 17. So in week 17, and I bring all this up because week 17 is typically the last game for real fantasy players. If you play in week 18, you are a degenerate human being. But some people do. We don't. Our championship game is in week 17. This is what we're vying for. This is what we want to do, is we want to try and get people to the playoffs and get them a championship. So Breece Hall is going to help you get there, and he is 100% a buy for me.
Yeah, as the running back 19 right now in PPR formats, what kind of price are you willing to pay? Like, I know obviously the million, what we're going to say is it depends on the roster buildup, right?
Yeah.
But like, let's say a guy needs a wide receiver. Are you going to ship, I don't know, Adam Thielen or Garrett Wilson or
I would 100%
Jalen
send
Waddle?
Garrett Wilson. I would send Jalen Waddle. I would send Garrett Wilson. Adam Thielen, that is tricky because Adam Thielen is seeing a lot of usage right now, which is insane because Adam Thielen, nobody had Adam Thielen on their radar to begin this year. But it all depends. Like you said, it's all going to depend on you. Would I trade Jalen Waddle? Yes. Would I trade Garrett Wilson? Yes. Would I trade Adam Thielen? If I had two startable wide receivers that I was confident in, yes, I would.
Okay.
But I lean towards probably not because I don't know if I would have those two strong wide receivers that I could count on.
Exactly. And I think at this point too, you're kind of counting on, if you have a guy like Garrett Wilson or even T. Higgins for that matter, you're hoping that their name value can get you there in a trade with somebody like Breece Hall.
100%.
Because
100%.
I think if you're playing with sharp people, if they're going to know what Breece Hall is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
He's taken over that backfield. He has a strong schedule. They're not going to give him up for cheap. And I think that's where you kind of have to be careful. You don't want to give up too much, but if you can squeeze,
that's
like
why I think he's such
guy,
a sneaky buy low candidate
because
he really hasn't had. I mean, he's been usable these last couple of weeks, but he started off slow. He was on buy. So now's the time to buy him, in my opinion, before his value gets too high and you can't afford him. And that's why he's probably one of my biggest buy candidates. Would you trade Jordan Addison for him?
Yeah, I think I would.
I would.
I think at this point, Justin Jefferson is going to come back with the way the Vikings have looked the past couple weeks. I think he's coming back in that 4-week span that he initially was on track for.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, Jordan Addison's value takes a hit. They do throw the ball a shit ton, so the volume's going to be there, but I'm not going to trust Addison to have the same performance that he had on Monday night.
No, I would. Right? I would
capitalize
Addison
on that. Like
Absolutely.
That's a perfect sell high candidate right there.
Exactly. All right, I got one for you, Eddie. You ready? You're also buying Breece Hall, is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to check. What about Chris Olave? Are you buying or selling Chris Olave right now?
Yeah, Chris Olave, he's a very popular man right now for some things that happen off the field. He recently,
He's fast.
Yeah, he's fast on the field and he's fast off the field too, which, it kind of hurts to see a little bit, the guy just being stupid with driving and whatnot. I speed a little bit.
Did you see? Oh, me too. But did you see that clip that came out of him telling the cop, he's like, I play for the Saints, man. And he's like, and I was just like, come on, dude. Like, are you serious right now? You broke the law. Man. And you're trying to use your credible fame to get out of it. I just thought that was kind of a scummy move.
Yeah, he's trying to pull a fast one on the 5-0. That's kind of ridiculous. Obviously, he got arrested. He got bailed out, whatever. I really don't think the NFL is going to do anything about this. I mean, you look at past incidents of people getting arrested in the season for speeding. Nothing has happen. It's usually been team discipline of, a game or something, but I doubt anything happens here. But on the field, Chris Olave, he is the fantasy wide receiver 20 in PPR formats at this current point. But he is actually in the top 10 for target with 88, and he has a whopping 32.7% target share right now. I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing with Chris Olave has to do with his chemistry with Derek Carr, which we saw on Monday night against Jacksonville. Carr was obviously very frustrated with Olave, and I think that they are going to get it together because Chris Olave, he is too talented to not figure it out with. To top it all off, Chris Olave has a very favorable schedule, especially in the playoff season. He plays the Jets. They're at the Rams, and they're at Tampa Bay. So 2 of those games are going to be in a dome. Don't have to worry about weather. Tampa Bay in January is going to be hot, so you don't have to worry about that. And I like to think that Chris Olave is a prime buy candidate at this point.
I still have my concerns. I think for me, I'm not going to say buy. I'm not going to say sell. I'm going to say what's the offer. That's where I look at here. So I'm going to offer you a couple different packages for Olave, and you tell me if you're buying him for this.
Okay.
Nico Collins.
Yeah, I would.
Michael Pittman Jr.
Yes.
Okay. Hollywood Brown and Alexander Madison.
Yes.
Okay. Jerome Ford and Scary Terry.
Yes.
Okay.
And I say that because I think Chris Olave, he's that guy that can get you a consistent 12 to 15 points, right? But his upside that we haven't seen yet this season because of his chemistry issues with Carr, he could be up there in the 25-point range as his floor, or even or his ceiling rather, or in the 30s. Like, he is capable of producing that huge game that we're used to seeing with Tyreek Hill because of how many deep balls he's getting and that are being missed with Carr. He gets a couple of those in a game. Watch out, man.
Okay. All right. I all those offers, I probably would also buy him for that. I'm trying to find one where you draw the line. You trade him straight up for Devontae Adams. That's a fun one.
Oh, why did you do that to me? That's rude. God, man, that's hard.
I'm going to say yes. I would take Olave over Adams.
I think so. I want to say yes, but I'm also at this point where I think the Raiders are going to have to just keep on forcing the ball to Adams to keep him happy. Even if they're losing and if they're going to hold on to him like they said they are, they have to feed him the ball, like double-digit targets every game. So,
yeah, but I mean, we'll talk about that in a moment, and that's a little teaser for the next buy sell or another one coming up.
So we'll move on to the next candidate, Slaps, Mr. DeAndre Swift. What are you doing here?
D Swift, baby.
Not Taylor.
Not Taylor. No, not Taylor. The running back. The other Kelsey Swift combo, the one for the Eagles. I'm going to sell DeAndre Swift, man. DeAndre Swift is a hard sell for him. Not a hard sell, but he's definitely someone I'd be looking to get off my roster quickly. And the reason being is he did have a breakout. It was electric, but I'm afraid of the future for him. He is getting 60 to 70% of the touches, and his matchups these last 2 weeks have been very juicy, and he really hasn't performed that well. I think it was like 13 and 10 points respectively, which was very underwhelming given how quick out of the gate he was to start the year. And this all paired with the fact that the Jets have a really difficult schedule the Eagles have a very difficult schedule that's coming up, and I don't really think that their end of season schedule is favorable enough for the running offense to be able to get it done. I would look to sell Swift.
I tend to agree with you here, actually. And I say that because the Eagles, they haven't done so thus far, but they have a history of involving Gainwell and Boston Scott later on in the season. And we also know that I was going to say Rashad Penny. God, he's on the roster. Yeah, but we know that DeAndre Swift has an injury history too. Mm-hmm. If he maintains this, 15 to 20 carries a game, can he do it for a 17 game span? because at some point they're gonna have to shut him down for the playoffs, right? Like they know these injury concerns are a thing with Swift. He's gotten hurt every year that he's been in the league. And if I own Swift in a fantasy league as the running back 6 right now, I feel like you could get a lot of value. You could possibly, I love selling him here, and if you could get a wide receiver plus some, like a backup running back, that would be great. Like a RB3 for your roster.
Yeah, well, and you look at it, like, I'm just going to name off the next couple games for the Eagles. They have Dallas at week 9. In week 12, they have the Bills, 13 San Francisco, 14 Dallas, and then 15, 16, 17 is Seahawks, Giants, Arizona. So it does get more favorable, but like you're in a stretch right now where these games are going to get difficult for him, and if you can't hold on through the pain and get your way into the playoffs, then there's no reason to keep him around. And so I'd be looking to sell him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I want to stop and pause for a second because I want to ask you, Slaps, if you had to hold on to one of these guys, which one would it be? Breece Hall or DeAndre Swift?
Breece Hall.
Breece Hall.
Yeah.
Would you sell Chris Olave for DeAndre Swift?
Would I sell Olave to get DeAndre Swift?
Or
would I sell DeAndre Swift to get Chris Olave?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I would.
Makes
If I can afford to and I have enough running back depth, yes, I would.
Okay.
I have concerns. I have concerns with the schedule. I have concerns with this offense. And that's the other thing that I really didn't touch on is this offense has looked somewhat lackluster this season compared to last as far as the throwing upside and Jalen Hurts moving around and doing what Jalen Hurts did last year. But we still know that is a capable thing that he is able to do. So while they're putting more of an emphasis on this run game this year, and by them I mean the Eagles, that could change at the flip of a coin. It really could, because we know what Jalen Hurts is capable of. We know how he can sling the ball down the field, and he has three wonderful weapons in Goddard, Smith, and A.J. Brown. So that is also the underlying thing, is this is not solely a run team like the Titans are. This is a dynamic team, and that run game can be taken away from you very quickly in fantasy football. He's been good enough for me to sell, and I'd like to do so and move on.
One more ridiculous question, maybe. Here.
Go ahead.
Would you send the Justin Jefferson owner a trade offer with DeAndre Swift in there?
That scares the shit out of me. I would say, yeah, I think I would.
Yeah?
I think I would.
If you were a JJ owner and you needed a running back, let's say you're completely fucked with running backs, would you do that straight up for Swift?
I would look for Breece Hall plus a little extra something instead if I was a JJ owner. But Justin Jefferson can come back week 10. And if he comes back in week 10, he's playing New Orleans, Denver, Chicago. He's on a bye week, week 13. I would do that. If I had DeAndre Swift and I could afford to, I'd buy Justin Jefferson right now.
Yeah. Let's say you're a contender right now and you're just kind of, coasting along and you have Swift. Why not? What's the risk?
I would do it. Would you?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's pretty fair straight up.
I do. Yeah, I think it is. And I think the upside for getting JJ versus what Swift is potentially projected to do could be in your favor. So yeah, I would do that. Let's go to Kenneth Walker III.
Man, we're picking on running back so far, aren't we?
We are a little bit. Well, you had Olave.
Yeah, that's true. Kenneth Walker, man. Am I stupid for selling a top 10 running back?
I don't know. I did the same thing. You tell me.
Man, so at this current point, I think it's not silly to sell Kenneth Walker. He's gotten a touchdown basically in every game. Except this last game, I think, against the Cardinals. But he did have a good game, right? 26 carries, 105 yards. But if you look at his upcoming schedule,
it's brutal. I just pulled it up, and
brutal,
oh my
man.
God, it's brutal.
I want to just emphasize the playoff schedule. So from week 15 to 17, he's got Philly, at Tennessee, and then versus Pittsburgh. Those are 3 defenses that are pretty good against the run. If you want we can open up the window a little more. He plays Cleveland this week, plays the Ravens following, and then the Commanders the week after.
I mean,
So,
he's got, and then Rams, San Francisco, Dallas, San Francisco, Philly. Like,
yeah,
this is a brutal run, like a brutal schedule for running backs. I like this sell Yeti, and I think
Yeah.
he's another prime sell, kind of like Swift. I think he's another prime sell candidate. I would be looking to offload him. I didn't realize, I just pulled up his schedule and started looking, and I'm glad you brought this to my attention. Not that I own any shares of Walker, but I think all the Brainiacs out there perhaps are not paying attention to this, because I certainly
Yeah.
wasn't. But this is a really difficult schedule for him.
because right now you're looking at Kenneth Walker as a solid guy. He has been very consistent for the first 7 games of the year, which is great, right? We're not worrying about any timeshare with Kenneth Walker, but
Sure.
once you start looking at his schedule, it is brutal. And if I own Kenneth Walker, which I do in a dynasty format, but that's different. If I own him in a redraft format, I'm trying to take advantage of somebody's team right now. I'm looking to, if I have wide receiver holes, I'm looking to go get a wide receiver 1 and possibly a running back 2, a low end running back 2 to replace Kenneth Walker. I don't think it's out of the possibility to get somebody like Keenan Allen. You could go get CeeDee Lamb if you trust that offense. You could go get Puka Nacua if you wanted to.
I don't know if a Puka owner would. I don't know if I don't own Puka. I own Puka in Dynasty, but I don't own him in a redraft format. I don't know if I'd be willing to sell him for that, to be honest with you. I mean, he's just been so great. Puka's almost, and maybe it's just me, but he would cost me a pretty freaking penny to get off my roster, and I don't even know if Kenneth Walker would do that for me. Let me ask you this: if you own Kenneth Walker, would you accept this trade? You trade away Kenneth Walker and you purchase Dameon Pierce and
Immediately, no.
And Josh Downs.
No. I don't. No.
Yeah, you just out on Dameon Pierce.
I'm
completely?
out on Dameon Pierce.
Like, I mean, he's got a really great schedule. He's got a great schedule coming up. He's got a great schedule.
He's splitting with his boy Devin Singletary down there, man.
He is a little bit, but that's your RB2. Okay, so what about Dameon Pierce and Christian Kirk?
I don't hate it, I guess.
You downgrade it running back a little bit, but
Yeah.
you get a high end wide receiver too.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that if you need some depth, right? Or if your wide receiver room is complete shit, I guess.
You still get, if you're trying to plug and play and still get a usable running back, and upgrade at wide receiver. You okay over there?
Yeah,
I got you a little nervous over there. What about A-Chain? You sell him straight up for Devon A-Chain right now.
I would need more. I honestly would, because I can't trust Achane. I don't know if Mostert's going to lead the backfield when Achane comes back. Like, there's just too many question marks.
I think A-Chain's going to be. I think he's going to be usable. All right, let's do James Cook and Hollywood Brown. I think that's pretty fair.
That's not bad.
I think James Cook is who I would take that side over Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Okay,
that's probably where I accept that.
Okay. I like talking about these potential trade offers because I think it just provides a little bit more insight into the value of players and gives the Brainiacs a little bit different of a look as far as like, oh, that is a decent trade target. So I like playing this game.
Yeah. Well, what about maybe somebody like Jacoby Meyer? I think we need to have a discussion about him for second slaps.
I think we do. This is insane to me. I can't believe that I am here and I am looking at you when you got all this Raiders gear behind you and you are the resident Raiders fan on this podcast.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm going to say go buy Jacoby Myers.
Are you okay?
I know it feels weird and it feels disgusting, but I think I'd be okay buying Jacoby Myers. He's wide receiver 12 on the season, which just blew me out of the water. I could not believe it. But Myers has put up double-digit points since week 4. And I think truly is the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders, which is absolutely just ridiculous to say because Devontae Adams is the wide receiver 1. But the fact of the matter is no quarterback can throw the ball deep. No quarterback for the Raiders is throwing the ball deep. Jim Garoppolo has not been playing recently. They've kind of had a back and forth between quarterbacks. And Jacoby Meyer has feasted for that reason. But even upon Jim Garoppolo returning, I think Jacoby Myers is still just such a juicy play. Because here's the situation at hand. Jacoby Myers, he's playing out of the slot a little bit more. He's getting those middle of the field targets. Devontae Adams historically, and we touched on this previously, Devontae Adams historically is the deep ball target. So defenses still have to respect him. Defenses are still covering him with their top guy, leaving Jacoby Myers open. And because none of the quarterbacks can throw the ball 20 plus yards, Jacoby Myers feasting. So all of this paired with the fact that the Raiders actually do have a pretty juicy end of season schedule for wide receivers. The only difficult matchups that they have for wide receivers are really the Chiefs and the Jets. So like I think Jacoby Myers, I think he's a buy for me, man, which is wild for me to say.
I tend to agree with you here, not because I'm a Raiders fan, but I love what Jacoby Myers has brought to this offense. Our offense, it sucks, right? But the good thing about our offense from a fantasy perspective is it is a very concentrated offense. You look at the people who are getting the ball the most, it's Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Jacoby Myers. That's it. Yeah. You look at other teams across the board, like the 49ers, for example, they have 5 guys that can get the job done any given week. And so it's hard to focus on, okay, I want Debo, or I want Ayuk, or I want Kittle. Like you can't really, it's hard, right? Yeah. But if you look at the Raiders offense, it's, I can plug and play Devontae Adams and hope he gets a touchdown and kind of salvage, or Jacoby Myers. He's lock and loaded as my wide receiver 2 every week. So I love this, especially with Jacoby Myers getting a 34% target share, which is insane. With him and Devontae Adams.
With Devontae Adams on the field.
Target share, yeah.
So it's one or the other.
Exactly. So my question to you is, what are we looking to buy Myers for?
Man.
Do you think like Madison straight up is fair?
Alexander Madison straight up?
Yeah.
I think I like the Jacoby Myers side better. Like if I own Jacoby Myers, I wouldn't sell him for Alexander Madison. So I don't know if that's equal. But if you can sell Alexander Madison and get Jacoby Myers, yeah, I would on a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Javonte Williams straight up?
Yeah.
For Jacoby Myers?
I would, yeah. That's the thing, though, is like I don't own any shares of Jacoby Myers, so I can't concretely sit here and say, like, would I sell him for that? Because if I did own him, I wouldn't sell him for that because he's performing, and he's performing a lot. But the other narrative to the story, Devontae Adams is the wide receiver 1.
Mm-hmm.
But Jacoby Myers is the wide receiver 1 for fantasy football, so it makes it so much more difficult because you expect the tide to eventually correct itself and Devontae Adams resume as the wide receiver 1, but it's just not happening. And that's where that's like, I don't know. Derrick Henry, straight up?
Oh, man.
I think that's where you get to the point where, and I haven't thought about it enough to really say yes or no, but I think there's an equal argument for both sides on this.
Yeah, I could see it. If your running backs are really hurting right now, I would be okay with that. Especially with murmurs around Derrick Henry possibly getting traded. Yeah. I take that. I'm looking at I know this is a dynasty team, but I'm looking at your team and seeing who I would take for Jacoby Myers, and I just can't do it. It's hard. It's hard to place a value on Jacoby Myers because
it is.
People look at him as a wide receiver 2, but he's producing as a wide receiver 1.
Anybody who owns him knows that, But like, if you were talking in fantasy circles, obviously everybody's gonna be like, I don't want Jacoby Myers. Why would I want Jacoby Myers? But the guy who owns Jacoby Myers says, I don't want to get rid of Jacoby Myers for pennies on the dollar because he's performing right now. So that's the situation that you're running into. I think Alexander Madison plus something would get me Jacoby Myers. But I don't think Alexander Madison alone would. And I'm not saying Alexander Madison and Jamar Chase, but like some, an ancillary piece I think is enough to maybe get that job done.
What about Demont straight up? Coming back from injury, maybe you can pry him away from somebody.
I'd explore it. I think I'd rather have David Montgomery. I mean, he was killing it before he got hurt. Yeah. Killing it. And you know that when he comes back, he's going to kill it again.
That's kind of what I'd be looking for if I had Jacoby Myers, though. Like if I was an owner, it'd be like, okay, I'm gonna need like a low end running back 1 at least. I think.
Yeah, no, I think that would probably be fair to say. Like it, You trade him straight up for Tony Pollard?
If I can get Pollard, yeah.
Yeah, I would do that. I would sell him for Tony Pollard, but I wouldn't sell Tony Pollard to get him. See, and that's the game that you're playing. We're back to square one. You know what I mean? It's difficult. Would you trade Jerome Ford for him? If you own Ford.
If I own Ford, I'd be trying to get rid of him. I think he's going to be out this week too.
Yeah, I think
so. Just keep that in mind.
Sure. Jaylen Warren plus Scary Terry.
Yeah. I wouldn't accept that as a Jacoby Meyer owner.
Yeah, no. But that's what I'm trying to get you to do. We'll say Jaylen Warren and Brandon Ayuk. Would you sell Jacoby Meyer for that?
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would probably do that too. It's interesting. He's probably the hardest case out of everybody we brought today because we know the story behind him, and now all the Brainiacs that are listening do as well. So they kind of have that mindset. But I would be trying to buy Jacoby Meyer. I really would. So go out there, explore the conversation with the owner, and see what they want because everybody might value him differently. So, I mean, he is performing right now, and people are going to recognize that. But you might be able to squeeze some juice out of that and still buy a little lower than perhaps expected. So. All right, Yeti, let's go over to Flex Appeal, my friend. Let's do it.
We need to get a good sounder here for Flex Appeal, man.
We really need a good sounder for this, and unfortunately, we don't have one at the moment.
My favorite part of the week, and we don't have a sounder, man.
Let's get Flexi, baby. Let's get Flexi.
Let's get down and Flexi, baby. I'll kick us off here, Slaps.
All right.
Here we go. First off the board, Javonte Williams versus Kansas City. Or D-Hop versus Atlanta.
This is gross.
You're welcome.
What you did to me is absolutely disgusting. I
didn't think it was too bad.
God. Oh, man. Can I just pass and start neither of them? And I'll start Jaylen Warren instead. I think...
It was pretty easy, man.
I think I'm going to do Javonte. D-Hop has been struggling, and D-Hop is very hit and miss. Atlanta's defense is actually not bad. Like, Atlanta's defense is decent. And D-Hop is not getting it done. This offense is not getting it done. I forgot about the quarterback situation. This is a lot easier than I anticipated. Ryan Tannehill's not playing, so it's a medley of trash quarterbacks that are going to try and get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins when their starting quarterback even can. So give me Javonte. This one's a lot easier than I thought.
Yep, exactly.
I just had to think. I just had to kind of talk myself through it, but we got there. So you're taking Javonte as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought this was easy because of the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I forgot about that when All right, let me propose one to you: Dameon Pierce versus Carolina, or Alexander Mattison versus Green Bay. This is battle of the RB2s.
Yeah, so both of these guys are giving up work to their backups, and Devin Singletary and Cam Akers. So I hate you right now.
Yeah, I chose these two specifically for that reason.
You look at the matchups, and they're honestly about even. Carolina and Green Bay both give up a lot of yards to running backs. But I think I have to go. I think I have to go Madison here. And here's why. They give up 134 rushing yards a game, and they give up the most touchdowns to running backs. So with Minnesota, I'm hoping that Alexander Mattison can be the red zone guy for them, because I know this team is going to get in the red zone, and they're going to score often. So I'm hoping that Madison can get those carries and get me a touchdown to at least hit double-digit points. With Dameon Pierce, he was getting the bulk of the carries to start the season, but before they went on the bye last week, he split with Devin Singletary kind of out of the blue. There weren't any reports about this. There weren't any injury concerns. I think it just has a matter of how effective or ineffective, rather, Dameon Pierce has been with those carries. He's kind of in the sophomore slump, as we like to say here. So it's got to be Madison for me against Green Bay.
I agree. I think, Cam Akers just started getting involved this last week as well. He was kind of sprinkled in, but he looked good. when he had the ball in his hands this last week. So I expect Alexander Madison to continue to be the running back one for this team, but I think we're going to start to see Cam Akers more involved. Both these are kind of in competition modes right now, but I think Madison is still has the headway here, and that could change. But I think if I had to choose, I'd also choose Madison.
Yeah. And kind of in that same game and same team slaps, I have my next flex appeal for you. T. Higgins versus San Francisco, or Jordan Addison versus Green Bay. We gonna ride the hot streak of Addison, or are we gonna?
It's hard not to
dabble with Higgins.
It's hard not to. Higgins this year has been very underwhelming. And I really feel bad for anybody that drafted T. Higgins, because you're kind of in this situation where you know you have a good wide receiver, but he just hasn't performed because his offense has been lackluster. Jordan Addison, on the other hand, has been pretty damn consistent. Like, you look at his numbers, he's put up double-digit numbers every single week except week 4. So that is one narrative to ride, as well as the fact that Justin Jefferson isn't around. So Jordan Addison is the pseudo wide receiver 1 in his absence. You look at the matchups, Green Bay's passing attack or passing defense is actually pretty stout, while we've learned that the 49ers defense, the way to beat the 49ers is through the air, because their run defense is still very good, but their passing defense is not as good. I think I want to take T. Higgins. I do, but I think I'm going to take Jordan Addison. I think I would take Jordan Addison this one. He has consistently been doing it, and the opportunity has continue to increase for him. While I understand the defense is a little bit more difficult, he is going to get a lot more looks from Kirk Cousins. So give me Jordan Addison in this one.
We're going to need a tiebreaker on this one, because I'm going with T. Higgins myself.
Oh, damn.
This might be stupid of me, but I'm trusting the Bengals off of their bye, that they got their situation with T. Higgins figured out. I'm hoping that the bye week helped with T. Higgins' injury and Joe Burrow's injury, and that they can get back on the same page, because like you had said, you can't beat San Fran through the ground. And Joe Mixon has been very ineffective with his carries thus far. And I expect him to throw the ball at least 40 times in this game if they want to win. And if they do that, Jamar Chase is going to eat, but T. Higgins is going to see volume as well. So I'm going to pray and hope that T. Higgins gets me there.
Okay. I think this one's really close. Like, I really do. I think this one, there's I mean, obviously we just sat here and argued about both sides, but I think that this is one of those things where I think it really comes down to like a coin flip, because both the arguments are stout enough that I'm still going to stick with Jordan Addison. You didn't sway me. You're still going to stick with T. Higgins. I respect the hell out of it, but I think this is going to come down to trust your gut more on this one for either party, because you can't go wrong in this specific one. The next one we have here for this flex appeal, Yeti, are you going to start Amari Cooper versus Seattle, or Rashee Rice, who plays for KC? So I don't know why it says versus.
They play
KC.
Denver.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll change that right now.
It's tough, because I want to trust the Kansas City wide receiver. I do. I really do want to. And I think Rice is kind of approaching that territory, but I still have this. It's not because I'm a Chiefs or a Raiders fan. It's just historically it's been hard to pinpoint a Chiefs receiver to start unless their name was Tyreek Hill. And I'm just not there yet. So I'm going with Cooper Kupp. But
even with Deshaun Watson out?
Yes. And I say that because the volume is... Huh?
You said Cooper Kupp. Amari Cooper.
Oh, yeah,
Cooper.
Amari Cooper. Yeah. I'm going with Amari Cooper because the volume is there with PJ Walker. Over the past 2 games, he's seen 8 targets in each game. I think it's just a matter of getting that chemistry down. And when you look at what Seattle's lacked this season, it's defending the run. The pass, rather. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
They can't defend it. They give up 184 yards to wide receivers on the season. So I look at Amari Cooper, as a prime bounce back candidate for week 8.
Okay. I'm also going to do the same. And the overarching concerning, I like Rashee as an own, but I have trouble starting him on a week-to-week basis because of Patrick Mahomes and his ability to spread the ball around. So he's done it pretty consistently. Rashee Rice has done it for you fantasy-wise pretty consistently, but if I had to choose, I would still be taking Amari Cooper in this one. Like you mentioned, I think that the volume is there, and I just... the inconsistency of the Chiefs offense for fantasy purposes is very frustrating. So I'd rather have the safer floor of Amari Cooper.
And look at Mecole Hardman too.
Yeah,
He got traded to the Chiefs last week. He's obviously familiar with that offense, but I bet they give him some more snaps this week. So
wouldn't surprise me.
yeah. So slaps my last flex appeal for you, my friend. Christian Kirk versus Pittsburgh, or Garrett Wilson versus the Giants.
That is not nice because you know my hatred for Zach Wilson. But the Giants defense is just bad.
So it's Pittsburgh.
I bet so is Pittsburgh's. It's Christian Kirk. It's Christian Kirk, man. I mean, here's the thing with Christian Kirk. He's the wide receiver. I mean, he's putting up wide receiver 1 numbers for this team. Like, it's not, everybody thought it was going to be Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley was going to come in. Go look at Christian Kirk's numbers. I dare everybody that does not own Christian Kirk to go look at it because I have it pulled up right here. He has not seen under 13 points since week 1. He's getting it done. He's getting good targets. I'm not going to say he's getting a shit ton, but he's getting good targets. He's catching all these balls and he's doing something with them. It's got to be Christian Kirk for me. Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is really interesting. Garrett Wilson's a sell for me. We've had a lot of people actually DMing us asking, like, should I buy Garrett Wilson or should I sell Garrett Wilson for this? I'm selling Garrett Wilson because I don't trust Zach Wilson. And if you get matched up against a very difficult pass defense, which the Jets really won't see again until week 11, I think they're going to struggle. So I would rather play Christian Kirk here.
Yeah. Yep, I 100% agree with you. And it looks like Zay Jones is actually going to be out again this week. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup for the past 3-4 weeks, and obviously that's helped Christian Kirk kind of break out, right? So I'm going with Kirk again this week.
All right. My last flex appeal for you, my friend, is Joshua Downs versus New Orleans or KJ Osborne versus Green Bay. These are both waiver wire pickups. They're both guys that were highly touted waiver wire targets the past couple weeks. So which one are you choosing?
Yeah, this wasn't very nice of you because both of these guys have pretty bad matchups, I will say.
They do.
I think what does it for me here is the fact that Josh Downs, he has 16.7 PPR points a game with Minshew starting. I don't think that's a coincidence. Him and Minshew have a clear connection. KJ Osborne, it's hard for me to trust him, especially after Addison's breakout game, and then Hawkinson is there as well. KJ just kind of looks like a guy out there. He's just a guy. Jag.
Just a guy.
Just a guy. So I'm rolling with Joshua Downs here this week to get me some upside.
No, I'm doing the same thing. Both the matchups are very similar, but I would be taking Joshua Downs as well. He's performing right now. He's wide receiver 27 on the year. He's the wide receiver 2 for this team. I know that it's supposed to be Alec Pierce, but realistically, Joshua Downs, the rookie, comes in and he's making a claim to be the next guy in line right behind Michael Pittman. I like Joshua Downs. I like him paired with Gardner Minshew. Give me Joshua Downs.
Man, look at these rookie wide receivers kind of coming out of nowhere and performing at a high level. You know, Puka. Late guy.
Yep.
Josh Downs, obviously. Jordan Addison is performing.
Yeah, they're doing
Zay
well.
Flowers. It's, our league is in good hands.
But it is. It's frustrating that I own almost none of these guys in redraft, but it is what it is. I've made poor decisions.
And then next year we'll have to draft them in the first 5 rounds.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's going to play out. We got one question. Let's get over to the Brainbusters, and then we'll get the hell out of here.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it comes, I wanna wail.
Oh, I was late.
You were real late, my friend.
Oh, damn. That feels bad. Scotty, help me out in post. Get that fixed, would you? Our only question tonight comes from Joe Budafoco. It's an interesting name. I kind of like it, actually. He wants to know, should I trade Kupp for Devon Achane and Justin Jefferson? I have Diggs and ETN and am currently sitting at 5-2. I like this question, and I appreciate all the good information. Sometimes when people ask questions, not that I don't appreciate all the questions, but sometimes people ask questions and they give like too much information. This was the perfect amount.
Yeah.
I really like this.
Just a little sprinkle, but enough to get a spot.
Yeah. I'm going to say, I would do this. I would trade Kupp for Devon Achane and Justin Jefferson. I do think that I agree with you, Yeti. I think Jefferson does come back this year. I think he will play. And if he does play, he's an instant plug-and play. And I think he's within the same realm of conversation as Cooper Kupp. Very obviously, they were drafted close to each other. They put up very similar numbers when they're both on the field. And then you get Devon Achane, who's going to come back from injury and potentially be that super fast, great running back that he was before he left. So, yeah, I would do this. I don't know how you feel, Yeti, but I would do that trade.
Yeah, I would 100% do that because I could argue that Kupp for Jefferson is straight up is fair. And
yeah, the only argument with that is Jefferson's value, I think, is slightly lower solely because there's that looming question mark over his head if he comes back.
Which I think he will. I think we're okay. I think I'll knock on wood for you. But I would do that, yeah, because you're getting upside with a Chan, and then if Justin Jefferson comes back to wide receiver 1 status, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I agree. Go do it, Joe Budafoco, and I appreciate the question. That's it, Yeti. That's all the time we have, brother. I appreciate you doing this. Everybody that is watching and or listening, all you dirty old nasty fat-brained brainiacs out there, hit the subscribe button, man. If you could go follow us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're consuming your stuff at, I'm going to tell you right now, it does mean the world because we are doing this for you guys, and we love all the questions and the listens and the continued support, so it would mean the world. Any last parting words, Yeti?
Tune in on Sunday before lock. We're going to be going on Twitter Spaces or whatever the hell it's called, Twitter Circles.
Yeah, I always fuck it up. It's Twitter Circles, sure, we'll call it that. But then we also have another team member of ours, Matthew Kahn, and I need to see if I'm saying that right. But he's going to be over on Instagram Live helping people as well. So we're trying to hit all these platforms. We do have a TikTok, but we're not doing the lives there yet. But if you're interested, we do have TikToks over there too. So, but go check us out live. If you have start sit questions, we're here for you. That's it. It's all the time we got. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.